episode 76 of the Real World Wellness Podcast. Hi everyone, I'm Christine Lehman, a nutritional therapy practitioner and the reverse diabetes coach, which is also the name of my website. I see clients in person and remotely, and I'm accepting a limited number of clients starting in March. If you book a package of 3 sessions, I'll throw in a free bonus session, but this offer is only good in March. You can reach me using my contact form or email me at christine@reversediabetescoach.com. Please remember while you're listening to the show, advice and information we provide is intended to be helpful and informative, but is not a substitute for medical advice or treatment. So, for those of you who have listened to the previous episode, you'll recall that I talked about autoimmune diseases with Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, who's the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Paleo Approach, and the book is designed to reverse autoimmune diseases and heal your body. So I want to spend more time this episode on leaky gut syndrome, its relationship with autoimmune diseases, what it is, why it occurs, and dietary ways to try and heal your gut and the syndrome. So first of all, it's important to know that a leaky gut is present in every autoimmune disease that has been tested. That includes rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, inflammatory bowel disease such as Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, celiac disease, multiple sclerosis, and type 1 diabetes. And that type 1 diabetes is insulin dependent, just to distinguish it from type 2. It may seem obvious that, and I'm quoting from Sarah's book here, it may seem obvious that a leaky gut is present in celiac disease, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis, which are, after all, pathologies of the gut. But in these 3 autoimmune diseases, increased intestinal permeability has been shown to precede development of the disease. So what that means is that a leaky gut comes first. So a leaky gut is really integral, if you will, or foundational to a lot of and not almost all autoimmune diseases. So that's why I want to spend some time on it this episode, so that you understand what it is and ways that you can try to heal the syndrome. So to talk about what it is, let's do a little primer here. If you know from my previous episodes, we do talk about the body's immune system. 80% of it lies within the gut. And this is because the gut is an essential barrier between the outside world and the inside. So the small intestine is where most nutrients are absorbed in the body, but it's not an open door. So some nutrients come in and everything else stays out. So you probably know that food must be broken down into its simplest forms to cross the lining of the small intestine. And there's a whole process, which I won't go into, about how food is digested in your digestive tract. But and I'll focus on the main points here. So what can't be digested by our bodies is excreted as waste. And amazingly, a single layer of highly specialized cells known as enterocytes is all that separates the inside of the body from the outside. And these cells have 2 very specific jobs. They transport the digested nutrients from inside the gut side of the cell to outside the gut side of the cell. And then they also keep everything else inside the gut so that it won't let it enter the body. So immediately across this barrier, again, we're talking about the enterocyte cells, are 2 important parts of the digestive system. The resident immune cells of the gut, who protects us from pathogens that might find their way across this enterocyte barrier, and a network of blood cells and lymphatic vessels that carry the digested nutrients from food to the tissues in our body that needs them. So it's important to understand just how essential this barrier function of the gut is to human health, because if you lose that, that's a critical factor in autoimmune diseases. So I'm just going to continue on a little bit more to describe the parts of the gut barrier. The first is called the mucus layer, and that's pretty much the way it sounds. It forms a physical barrier between the inside of the gut and the inside of the body. And then this barrier is not impermeable. So impermeable means that it can go through it, right? And so actually another term for leaky gut syndrome is permeable intestinal permeability, So in contrast, so this barrier is not impermeable. That means actually that the pathogens and other substances can get across. So permeable allows it to get across. Impermeable means there's more of a barrier and pathogens cannot get across. So just inside the enterocyte layer lie the resident immune cells of the gut. And you may have I learned this term in nutrition school, macrophages. Dendritic cells, IgA secreting B cells, and T3 lymphocytes. So I know this is getting pretty sciencey. These are I like this term, the sentries or the guards of the gut barrier. They're ready to protect the body from attack. Now the gut also includes, an organ called the lymphoid and the lymphoid tissue, which is also referred to as the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And it houses a number of T cells and B cells so that the adaptive immune system, and there's the adaptive and the innate immune system, is very close at hand, and they can join any defense against invading pathogens. So when does a leaky gut occur? Well, it occurs when either individual or groups of enterocytes are damaged, or the proteins that form the tight bonds between these cells and hold them together as a solid layer are damaged. So when this happens, these sort of teeny little holes are formed, which some of the contents of the gut can leak out, hence the term leaky gut syndrome, into the bloodstream or lymphatic system. What leaks out is really a combination of pathogens, and these can be described as incompletely digested proteins, bacteria or bacterial fragments from those friendly bacteria that are supposed to stay in your gut, infectious organisms if they're present in your gut, or a variety of toxic substances or waste products that would normally be excreted. So the problem is that when these pathogens leak through these little teeny holes in your gut, your body, which is made up of, again, immune cells, right? 80% of your immune system resides in your gut. They see them as foreign invaders. They don't recognize them as the normal types of tissue or, normal material that would be residing there. They view them as foreign invaders, therefore they go on the attack. And that's really what causes this immune response and triggers inflammation, and that sends the immune system into overdrive. So that's really an important piece of how this whole leaky gut syndrome occurs. Now, there are different kinds of responses in terms of sort of dose response, if you will, or amounts of inflammation. For example, bacterial fragments and toxins cause generalized inflammation by triggering the release of inflammatory cytokines. And those are chemical messengers that circulate in the blood and tell white blood cells to attack. But these are more diffuse. They don't have a specific target. And the liver is also involved. And then other substances like incompletely digested proteins stimulate the adaptive immune system, which responds in different ways, such as producing ailments such as allergies and autoimmune disease. An allergy results when B cells secrete IgE antibodies that target a part of the protein that is specific to the food it originated from. For example, antibodies targeting the casein, which is a milk protein, causes a milk allergy. A similar immune response occurs when B cells secrete IgA, IgD, IgM, or IgG antibodies. So these are all different classes of antibodies, and if you were to get tested for food allergies or even celiac disease, there are different antibodies that are involved, and the doctor should be able to explain that. This type of immune response is typically considered a food intolerance, but can cause both allergy-like symptoms. So not every allergy is going to have one of these Ig antibodies, but and I have blogged about the difference between a food intolerance, a food allergy, and a food sensitivity, and I'll include the link in the show notes. But allergy-like symptoms and symptoms you might normally attribute to an allergy, such as pain, fatigue, and eczema, can occur. It gets pretty complicated because some of these antibodies produced may also be autoantibodies, which is, again, your immune system kind of turning on itself. The release of cytokines is also stimulated, which stimulates further recruitment of the cells from both the innate and adaptive immune systems. So a leaky gut provides both the trigger to the body to produce autoantibodies and the extra stimulus to the adaptive immune system to attack, two of the three necessary ingredients in the quote-unquote recipe for autoimmune disease. Now the third criteria is genetic or risk factors, genetic susceptibility. And some people have several genes that make them more susceptible, and then there's a mild environmental trigger. So it doesn't take much environmentally to trigger it, or they may not have, they may have a few genes, but then they have some kind of a lot of environmental triggers, and that can also produce that. Now, the third criteria is really a risk factor, is really diet and lifestyle. And the good news is that you can do a lot of healing of your gut, and including leaky gut syndrome, through diet and lifestyle. So I want to focus now on that. And so one of the things, what I call sort of the low-hanging fruit, is in terms of diet. And you probably won't be surprised if you're spending any time listening to anything paleo related, or just even the research now shows that a large segment of the population has a gluten sensitivity. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the science behind this. So gluten sensitivity may be the single biggest contributor to a leaky gut in most people with autoimmune disease. Gluten intolerance means that antibodies are being created against gluten, a protein in wheat and many other grains. So it's not, people just automatically assume it's wheat, but it's not. As I was saying, it's estimated to affect 20 to 40% of the population, which is pretty large. You can test it by measuring the IgE, which is technically an allergy, IgA, IgG, and sometimes IgM antibodies against the protein fraction of gluten and gliadin. Some people have an IgD antibody, and that will not necessarily show up in tests. There are no tests for that. So even if you get tested, it's not 100% foolproof, but you may want to start there, or you just may want to eliminate gluten completely from your diet. That's probably a less expensive way to go. So gluten belongs to a family of proteins called prolamins, which are rich in the amino acid proline. Not surprisingly, they're a class of carbohydrate binding proteins present in all forms of life. These proteins are difficult to digest and are known to interact strongly with the brush border of the intestine. The body has a hard time digesting prolamins. Our digestive enzymes are not very good at breaking them apart. The bond between two prolamins. The result is, first, gluten is known to cross the intestinal barrier, either intact or partly digested. Second, gluten can be disproportionately can disproportionately feed the bacteria in the gut, leading to gut dysbiosis, or you may have heard of small intestine bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, which is related to gut dysbiosis. So because of gluten's propensity, inclination to cross the barrier, I would just frankly eliminate it from your diet. But I want to give you a few caveats. One is if you're considering testing for a gluten sensitivity or certainly celiac disease, which is more serious in a way than a gluten sensitivity, even though they're both can have some serious implications for your health. The key thing is that you need to remain on gluten to be tested. There's only one test that's an exception for that, and that focuses more on your genetic or hereditary propensity for it. So, and that the test, in my opinion, is limited. So I would recommend staying on gluten until you get tested, and then of course you can, if you're going to go that route. Another option is to consider going on the paleo diet, which eliminates gluten, but also eliminates grains, which can have some other proteins that maybe cause problems. It certainly eliminates legumes, which have phytates that can bind minerals, important minerals from being absorbed, which is important to get the benefits. Another common allergy is milk or lactose intolerance. And of course, the paleo diet eliminates those proteins like casein, for example. So you may want to consider that, but if you're not ready for paleo, just start, eliminating gluten, see how you feel. And then you can always just eliminate, more. You can eliminate legumes, you can eliminate milk, and pretty much those are the grains if you find that gluten isn't enough to eliminate from your diet. I found that, you might imagine, since I talk about the paleo diet, I have found it to be very helpful in working with my clients with a variety of disorders, including autoimmune. But autoimmune is often even more complicated, therefore the book and the autoimmune protocol. But it has been extremely helpful also in getting blood sugar under control, and even Sarah Ballantyne, the importance of that in her book as well. The other, thing we talked about was nutrient density. So the paleo approach really focuses, and all, the paleo approach, meaning not just the book title, but in general, is really nutrient dense. And one of the things that Sarah talked about in the last episode was, nose to tail. So you really take advantage of organ meats. You want to get very high quality protein, again, grass-fed meat, organic. Try working with a local farmer or a collective, CSA. You want to get as much fresh produce, local seasonal produce, meaning fruits and vegetables, in your diet. And she goes into great detail in the Paleo Approach book that she authored with lots of good charts and lists on all of this. So the main point is that the paleo diet is also nutrient dense. And if you recall, Sarah was very inspired by the story of a woman named Terry Wall, WHL, who gave a TEDx talk about how she reversed her multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune disease, using a very nutrient-dense approach. And I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm going to, and I will try and find the link and include it in the show notes. So it's not just, removing things from your diet. Yes, that's part of it, because, these things can cause, obviously, inflammation, which contributes to leaky gut syndrome and autoimmune diseases. But the other piece of this is that you may be malnourished from, first of all, the standard American diet, which is very heavy on high, non-nutritious carbs, a lot of refined carbs, lots of sugar, and even junk food. And so you're not getting the nutrients, meaning vitamins and minerals, that you need, but you're also maybe eating poor quality meats and poor quality fats. So nutrient density is a very important concept. Then if you are on the paleo diet, and like Sarah, you find that you still have some skin conditions like eczema or psoriasis, and there's still a few things that are not healing, clearing up for you, then you might want to go further. So one of the things I love about Sarah's book is she has this autoimmune protocol, which she described, it's not, just eliminating. It helps you eliminate certain things from your diet, but in a very nutrient-dense way. And as she said, she didn't originate the concept, but she took it a bit further. So I have found in my work with clients with Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease, and other conditions, allergies, histamine intolerance, and so on, that it's very helpful to just start removing kind of certain categories of foods. For example, you might want to remove nightshades. That can help with arthritis, or FODMAPs, or nuts and seeds. Or you might want to start just removing all of these things, which are described in the book, and it usually doesn't take that long, a couple weeks maybe. And let your gut heal for a while, especially, frankly, if you've been on the paleo diet but you're not consistent with it, or you're not getting enough results with it. Your gut still needs to be healed further, and to get rid of the inflammation that you're still having. So I recommend being sort of following the autoimmune protocol and being on it for at least a month, up to, it depends on the individual, but somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks. And then you want to reintroduce foods. And there's a very nice chart with stages, 4 stages that you reintroduce the foods, which can include, eggs and yolks and nuts and seeds, and, it's beyond just FODMAPs and nightshades. So I found that very helpful in my work with clients, and I have to say I've gotten very good results. So what's nice is you can kind of proceed in stages with this. You don't have to, it's not an overnight thing. You may, again, just start going gluten-free and start eliminating some other things. Go on the paleo diet, see how you do, and then if you need to adopt an autoimmune protocol, it's right here in the book. And I will include the link to the book in the show notes, and hopefully Terry Wall's TEDx talk as well. So before I close out, I'm just going to mention that I'm really super excited to announce that I will be interviewing Robb Wolf, who's like a superstar in the paleo world, about his new book, Wired to Eat, which is going to be available in bookstores and on Amazon the 3rd week in March. So I am really excited about that. And just for those of you who haven't heard of Robb Wolf, he also authored the New York Times bestseller called The Paleo Solution. So it's really, frankly, an honor to be interviewing him for episode 77. So stay tuned for that, and everyone, and have a great, healthy